Good afternoon, sisters and brothers. Once again, happy to be here for our first Friday Wellness webinar. As many of you know, my name is Abdul-Basit Haqq. I am the Healthcare Ombudsperson assigned to CW Local 1037. And if you don't know, the Healthcare Ombudsperson's program that CW negotiated is a joint venture between the state of New Jersey and CWA, right? The idea here is that you, the member, has someone at your local that is able to provide you with education and counseling regarding your healthcare matters, your healthcare plans, your benefits and whatnot. I'm also here to help you resolve any issues that may come up in the course of engaging with those health benefits. Obviously, I cannot promise the outcomes, a specific outcome, but if there is an issue, we do urge you to contact the local. Let's have a conversation and to work together to resolve that issue. A lot of times, folks think they're the only one facing this issue, but particularly when we're dealing with health benefits and claims denials and such things, there can be issues that your coworkers are facing, and it's something that maybe we're not needing to address on a one-on-one basis, but a broader basis, at a different level. And by you coming, you're not only helping yourself, but you're going to help your coworkers, and workers to come years later. And lastly, part of the program is we continue to work with the various entities that deal with health benefits, and to constantly work to create better healthcare outcomes for our members. Now, usually we've done these first Friday webinars, and we've kind of focused on a lot of the ancillary benefits that are available to you, the member, within the state health benefit program, right? We've talked about like Hinge Health, and talking about joint and back pain, or we've done NJ Well, which is the financial incentive program to get us more healthier and give us a little bit of a financial incentive to do so. But today we're kind of shifting gears in a bit, right? It's not healthcare in the way you may that first comes to your mind. Today we are going to have a conversation on your life, and a good quality life starts with a good talk. And we can't predict when there a medical emergency or some kind of serious illness may happen to us, but we can prepare ahead of time for these events by talking about what matters most to us with those who matter most to us, right? And so whether depending on your age, you have to have a conversation with your parents about their wishes, or you have to have a conversation with your children about your own wishes. This webinar is for you, right? And I am honored to invite speak to us today, Adelisa Perez, the Director of Quality at the New Jersey Healthcare Quality Institute, to go through this webinar with us, to lead us to help get us more comfortable in having that conversation with our loved ones. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adelisa. The floor is yours. Thank you very much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Adelisa Perez Hudgens. I'm a registered nurse by background. And as mentioned, I serve as Director of Quality at the New Jersey Healthcare Quality Institute, which is a nonprofit advocate organization focused on improving the safety, quality, and affordability of healthcare for everyone. And we oversee a statewide program. It's called Conversation of Your Life, and really focuses on providing education and resources to New Jersey residents on how to share their wishes for care. And so we are going to talk about healthcare planning, but in a different way than you may be used to, as Abdul-Basit mentioned. It's really talking about preparing ahead for a medical emergency or serious illness. And by the end of our conversation today, you'll walk away with a better understanding of why talking about your wishes for care is important, some options for you to consider, and then some practical steps to make your wishes known and honored. It's going to be brief. We're going to talk for about 15 minutes or so. I know it's a lot of information, so I welcome any questions at the end, and then we'll provide you some resources where you can kind of dive deeper into some of the things that we're going to be talking about. There we go. So first, before we kind of get started, I'd like you to just take a moment to think about, what would you want done if the unthinkable happened? And so what if you had a major heart attack? What kind of care would you want your healthcare team to provide to you? And what if that heart attack left you unable to eat on your own? Does that change your mind at all on those actions that you would want them to take? And then to just take a quick moment to think about what if that same heart attack also left you unable to breathe or move on your own? Sometimes another kind of thing that might relate better to you is, what if you were in a car accident and that left you with the ability to not walk or left you in a coma? And so in these situations, would you want every medical treatment that could be done to be done, or only some? Or maybe it would depend on the outcome, on how your quality of life would be after you recover. And if you became too ill to communicate or make your own decisions, are there undone things you would might wish you could say or do? And is there anyone else besides yourself that knows any of this information? And so it's not important to me right now whether your answers to this is yes, I want everything done, or I don't want anything done. What I'm really asking you to think about is the kind of care you would or would not want to receive if you became too ill or were faced with an unexpected medical emergency or serious illness and could not speak for yourself. And that's really what advanced care planning is. And many people have heard this term before, and for those who have, most think it's for an older adult, someone over 70, over 80, or someone near the end of their life with a serious illness. But that's not the case. We don't know when a medical emergency is going to happen to us. We don't know when a serious illness will occur and the impact it will have. And in fact, many of the laws that we have today regarding our rights and wishes for care are actually a result of accidents and medical emergencies that happen to people in their early 20s. And so advanced care planning is simply planning ahead of time for the care that you want to receive later. And by having these conversations now, you're giving yourself the time to fully understand all of your options for care so that you can make the decision about what you want to receive. You can share those wishes with those who matter most to you and your healthcare providers, and you can put those wishes in writing so anyone, anywhere knows what your wishes are. Advanced care planning considers more than just your medical needs. It really talks about your personal, your emotional, and your spiritual needs. So it involves a lot of thinking, learning, and communicating with others. And it's not a one-time event, just like we have different milestones in our lives, things that we look forward to or things that happen to us. Your advanced care planning should be revisited throughout your life. When it comes to quality of life, many studies have found that most people with a serious illness want to be at home, in the company of loved ones, free from pain and suffering, and in control of the care that they receive. And when it comes to medical care, this quality of life really means that many people wouldn't choose to live longer if that meant having a poorer quality of life. We all want a good quality of life, but what that means to each of us is different. And so a good quality of life to one person may be that they're just comfortable and pain-free. Someone else might say that their quality of life really depends on their ability to care for themselves or to be able to walk. And a third person might say, their quality of life, really their goals are aimed at the next major event. So maybe they want to be able to enjoy an upcoming birthday or an upcoming family vacation. Unfortunately, what has been found is that many people end up receiving unwanted care and unnecessary hospitalizations, particularly at the end of life. And so in New Jersey specifically, patients near the end of life are treated with more aggressive medical care than almost any other state in the country. And the problem isn't that we are receiving more aggressive care in the state. The problem is that oftentimes the care that we want to receive is not the care that we actually end up receiving. And so our care is not aligning with our wishes. We do not want to have this aggressive medical care or these treatments, and that's what we end up happening to us. There's a couple of reasons of why that happens. I'm just going to touch quickly on a couple. One reason is growing innovation, right? There's a lot of advances in medical care and medications and advances in surgery, which is really great news. But as a result, it really has shifted our attitudes and how we think about and respond to our health and healthcare. And we expect to live longer, and we expect our doctors and our nurses and others to help us do that in an acceptable way, sometimes not always recognizing the trade-off that we may be accepting. And again, it's not whether extra time is what you're looking for. The answer that we're really talking about here, the point is that we're not being given that option to decide for ourselves about the care that we want to receive. And we also assume that our healthcare providers, so your doctors, your nurses, your social workers, other people in the field, will tell us what we need to know about our health and options for treatment or care, and to have these honest, open conversations with us about the likely outcome of our illness or our emergency, and to bring up this topic because it's so important. But what has been found, there's been a lot of studies on this, is that many healthcare providers are not having these conversations because they haven't received any formal training on how to have these conversations and how to talk about advanced care planning. There was like a 2016 study of physicians, and about half reported that they weren't sure what to say during these conversations. And so when you add in that your doctors and your nurses have really gotten to know you really well while they're treating you, and they even possibly know your family members really well, it can make these conversations even harder to have. There has been a lot of great efforts to improve provider education on advanced care planning over the last several years and how to have these conversations with patients, but that's a gradual process and it's going to take time to really reach all of the medical community. Which really brings us to our last challenge, and that's something we can do about today and now, is our own lack of knowledge about advanced care planning and how to have these meaningful conversations with others. A majority of people, even those who are seriously ill, haven't talked about their or documented their wishes. We did a survey a couple of years ago. So in New Jersey, about 50% of adults have never had conversations with someone about their wishes for care. And of those who did, only about a quarter of them, so 25% of them, talked with a healthcare provider, who is ultimately going to be the one responsible for giving you that care. About 70% of New Jersey adults do not have an advance directive, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But people really avoid talking about, our advanced care plans and end of life because it's painful. They don't really think that they're going to get sick anytime soon, or you don't expect to get into a car accident or encounter some other medical emergency. And so it's difficult, and we often treat these conversations as a medical moment, an emergency that we're dealing with, and having these conversations as they're happening to us rather than planning ahead for that. But there is something that we can do about that. Again, that's why we're here today. So there are 3 keys or main steps to ensuring that you get the care that you want. And the first is really to consider your options for care. It's knowing what you do or you do not want so that you can make crucial decisions about what's most important to you. This requires you to think ahead while you're healthy, to really process your past experiences with being sick, with knowing loss and others who have been sick and the healthcare system, and learning about the options and benefits and risks for each one. So for instance, one option for you to consider is cardiopulmonary resuscitation, also known as CPR. And so that's a medical action that can be taken by a qualified professional to restart your heart if it has stopped beating, or to help you breathe again if you stop breathing. So during CPR, your healthcare provider pushes on your chest with force, and they may also breathe air into your lungs to get your heart to start again or your lungs to work and help you breathe. Sometimes they use equipment and medications to help your heart start or to help you breathe. It is quite normal for CPR to cause broken ribs or other functional impairments, and that's often not talked about a lot when we're talking about CPR or when we see it on TV and in the movies. There are other options for you to consider as well, artificial nutrition and hydration if you're not able to eat or drink on your own, and other options to help you breathe, such as a machine called a ventilator, which a lot of us have heard about more so during the pandemic. And so these are some options for you to consider the kind of care that you would want under what conditions or for how long. How long would you want to be on a ventilator? How long would you want something to help, a tube to help you eat or get hydrated? 2 other additional options for you to consider are palliative care and hospice care. And I do just want to touch on them briefly because folks often confuse them with one another. So palliative care is an approach to care that seeks to improve your quality of life. It focuses on providing care based on your needs, not your illness. And so it's really a resource for anyone with a chronic or serious illness at any stage of the illness. So whether you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 50s or 60s, it's really there to focus on symptom management while also still allowing you to receive other care for your condition. So a good example is if you have heart failure, it can be really difficult to breathe regardless of being on medications and oxygen, and you might have a hard time managing that shortness of breath. So palliative care will provide care by a specially trained team of doctors and nurses and others who work with your regular physicians and nurses to help improve your symptoms. Once you're feeling better, you come off palliative care and you can go back on and off of it as much as you need to help with your symptoms. Hospice care on the other end is for someone near the end of their life. It's really focused on improving the quality of life for however long you have left. And so it can be extended, but typically that ranges for someone within the who has 6 months or less to live. Both, however, do provide physical, psychosocial, and spiritual needs, meet your spiritual needs in addition to your medical needs. And they both focus on improving communication and care coordination. So those are 2 really valuable and really underutilized benefits. The second is to really consider, The second key is to communicate your wishes for care. You want to select someone who can make your decisions on your behalf if you're unable to make them for yourself. And this person is known as your healthcare agent. It's also called a healthcare proxy or durable power of attorney. And you can name a backup should your first choice be unable or unwilling and that moment to make those decisions for you. And I always like to share that the decision as to whether you are no longer able to make your own medical decisions is not determined by that person that you choose as your healthcare agent. The team treating you is the one who makes that decision. Your healthcare agent can be anyone you want it to be. It could be your spouse, your partner, a close family member, a friend, or even your neighbor. It should be someone who knows you pretty well and who you feel comfortable talking to about your wishes. It should not be your physician or your nurse. It's important that you let this person know that you've selected them to be your healthcare agent and you have a conversation with them about your wishes, because you really want to make sure that they are comfortable with the decisions that you've made and they feel comfortable putting them into place if the time comes. And you can choose what you want your healthcare agent to be able, what decisions you want them to be able to make or not make for you. This is a really quick video clip by the Conversation Project on choosing someone to speak on your behalf. Let me know if you can't hear it or see it. Let me try to play it here.
Your healthcare proxy, like if you need someone to tell the doctor what to, I just go with whatever the doctors say. I wouldn't want to bother them. They're so busy. Doctors know best, right? Be your healthcare proxy? Sure, I'd be happy to. If I'm in town, check out my Instagram pics from Peru. Wish you were here.
Oh, I could never let you go. I can't even throw a plant away. As long as it's got one little green leaf. I'd be like, can't we upload her to the cloud?
Well, heck yeah. I've given this a lot of thought. Let me tell you what decisions you're best off going for. You never let them resuscitate. And if they even try to hook you up to one of those breathing machines, never. I got this. I totally got this.
How can you even talk about this? I can't, okay? I just can't. Mom, it's not like you're gonna die. No, I can't talk right now.
Oh wait, did I show you that meme from iFunny? The cat and the dishwasher? Oh my gosh, okay. So the cat's like, and then he's like, oh wait, sorry, what?
Well, hon, you and I have been through so much together. Here's what we'll do. We'll sit down, get a cup of coffee, and you tell me what matters to you.
Well, it wouldn't be easy. I mean, I'd be sad, but I have your back.
I remember when we went through this with Mom, we really spoke about it. So I think I can do that.
So the video is really trying to make light of the situation to convey a really crucial and accurate point, is that it's important for you to really think about who can best serve as your healthcare agent, and that they will be comfortable and agree with your preferences for care. And so it takes a lot of time to think about who that person should be and to have those conversations with them.
Yes.
And then the third key is to create a written plan. That is an advance directive. And so that is a legal written document that details your wishes and preferences for the type of care you would want to receive or not want to receive. It allows your expectations to be known to those who matter most to you, to your healthcare team. It keeps you in charge of your care and really prevents stress and conflict among those important to you. There are different types of advance directives. Here's images of a couple of them. So there's in New Jersey, the New Jersey Living Will. It's also known as an instruction directive. There is the 5 wishes, which is another type of legal advance directive form. And it's one of the most commonly used forms in the US. It's really written in easy to use everyday language. And the nice thing about 5 wishes is that in addition to your medical wishes and legal wishes, it also talks about your personal, emotional, and spiritual wishes. So things like, do you want music playing, what candles lit? Do you want your hands to be massaged? Do you want people in the room with you? And it talks about, and it gives you some more options to choose from, and then gives you space to write in additional wishes. And then the post form is a practitioner order for life-sustaining treatment form. It's different than the other 2 forms. The post form focuses on immediate specific critical life-saving decisions that are put into a medical order. So the post form is really intended for those individuals who have 6 months or less to live, again, because it's a medical order. And so this is really all about, your preferences for care and how you want to be remembered and how you want to spend what may be your final moments in the event of a serious illness or medical emergency. Once you have your advance directive, it's important for you to sign it. You need 2 witnesses, and then you want to provide copies to everybody so that they have it. Again, if something happens, they know where the copy is so they can inform your healthcare team, your doctors and your nurses about the care that you want, and you want to review it regularly. I often get asked what happens if I don't have an advance directive. So in New Jersey, we have what's called New Jersey's kinship law. The facility must designate someone to make healthcare decisions on your behalf. And so here's a quick look at that list. And so your legal guardian, your healthcare proxy, then they go to your spouse, they go to your child. If you have multiple children, all children have equal input, which means if you have 3 children, and 2 want one thing and the third one wants something else, that no decisions can be made until all of your children are in agreement. Then, your parents, siblings, other adult relatives, sometimes a friend, you start to get into some legal court-appointed matters after that. And just some quick tips on how to have these conversations. The first way is to really start by filling out your advance directive. It gets you starting thinking about some of your options and choices that you would want to make. But once you have a sense of what you would like to receive for care, there are a lot of icebreakers to introduce the conversation. A lot of people like to use movies. I put a picture of Coco here because that's one of a funner option, but it's just a way for either during the movie or after the movie to really say, I didn't like that they did this in the movie, or I really would want this for myself. And it's just starting to introduce people to an idea of some of the wishes for care that you have. You can also read a book together or suggest they read one and then talk about it afterwards. There are games available out there. There's a game, there's Go Fish. So it's kind of a card game to help you talk about this. There is the Death Deck. Again, it also just helps introduce the conversations and really being prepared to talk to your healthcare providers. Be curious, ask questions, tell it like it is. Tell them this is what you want and ask them to help you get that. And then schedule an appointment. You can schedule a separate appointment with your doctor or your nurse specifically to talk about your wishes for care. So I know that was a lot of information. Really, it's the main point of this is to have a good life and a good death, whatever that causes it, whether it's a serious illness or a medical emergency or just old age. There's a lot of information out there available for you. I provided here our website at the end. It's njhcqi.org/COIL. There are a lot of great resources available out there. What we've done on our website is brought them all onto one page so that you can easily access them and identify different resources. We also have recorded webinars that dive deeper into a lot of these conversations. So, we have webinars on hospice and palliative care, on legal planning, we have funeral planning, and then for different illnesses. So if you or someone has Alzheimer's, caregivers, some decisions that they would have to make as a caregiver and some things to consider if you're a caregiver, veterans specific content. So we're happy to provide any assistance that you might need along the way. You can feel free to reach out to me directly with any questions or if you need help in connecting with a resource out there. So thank you so much for your time. I know that was a lot of information. Again, happy to answer any questions, or if you think of them later, you can feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much, Adelisa. Before we jump into some questions, I think this is a very important topic. I know just firsthand, secondhand experience, I guess, rather. Very recently, like my wife had a family relation that unfortunately had an illness befall them, and they didn't have an advance directive, and they had multiple people in that, like the list you just presented a moment ago, that could have made that decision and had to come to some kind of agreement. And frankly, it was kind of a very chaotic process, and it was it kind of led to some kind of disruption amongst the family, right? And that as this was going on, I kind of thought about our upcoming webinar, and we kind of mentioned amongst ourselves if this person had an advance directive, it could have taken away this very difficult decision from the family, and allow them to like, concentrate on the person and on their health, and making their peace with what was happening, rather than, having to think about this very difficult decision and then kind of arguing amongst themselves. And so I took that, between your presentation just now and my own little life experience a moment ago, to think that, it's really important, right? This topic is very important. I do encourage our members to continue to review the information that Adelisa presented, and start that difficult conversation. So I thank you so much for presenting this information. Before we get to the questions, I actually have one of my own.
Sure.
You showed us a moment ago, 3 different options we had: the NJ Living Will, the 5 Wishes, or the Pulse. For like the average person who's just trying to like dip their foot in the water here and get started, what would you recommend? Which option would you think might be easiest for them to go through, just to utilize?
Yeah, the 5 Wishes, again, it is just really an easy to use, simple language. It's 5 wishes, so they walk you through each wish. They provide you options that you can consider and choose from, as well as space to write in your own options for care. The New Jersey Living Will is a great choice. It's a great option, but it does tend to be really focused on the language is very medicalized and legalized, and so people can have a hard time understanding what it's asking or knowing what their options are for care. It tends to require you to know what you want and to just kind of fill it out, whereas 5 Wishes presents you with a lot of different things to consider. So that one tends to be most well used in across the country. If you're interested, if anyone's interested in the 5 Wishes, we're happy to provide a copy to you. You could just reach out to me.
If possible, can you send one to me, and I'll ask Karina, our comms director, she could just send it to all the participants today. So it's just that's one less thing they have to worry about.
Yeah.
You don't have to reach out. We'll take care of that for them.
Sure, I will connect with you after this just to get the address for where they should be sent.
All right, thank you so much. Karina, are there any questions in the chat?
There actually aren't. I think we pretty much got everything answered. Thank you, Adelisa.
So I actually wonder, folks, were all your questions answered? Or, I gotta say, like, even for myself, this topic is something that we don't, like Adelisa mentioned, we may not necessarily want to talk about. So I wonder if there's some hesitancy around that. I guess I had one other thought. As you started off, you mentioned that many people experience unwanted and often unnecessary hospitalizations, and I was thinking, like, if you're in the midst of your own crisis, right, or your end of life or whatever have you, and your doctor is presenting all these XYZ options, just thinking about, like, sometimes I go to a restaurant and there's like a million options to pick off the menu. Like, how do you really, in that moment of uncertainty, like, make the best decision for yourself? And I was, I actually thought again, like, hey, having this right now, as thankfully I'm a very healthy individual, I could probably sit down with my wife, sit down with my parents and my siblings and be like, hey, I think this is what I want, and I'm gonna write it up, rather than, like, God forbid I did get into an accident or something, and I'm conscious and I'm able to make my own decisions, but at the same time, it's probably overwhelming, right, at that moment.
Yeah, it's very overwhelming, and it's hard, again, because we don't, well, one, we're so busy in all of our lives, right? We have a million other priorities, whether it's work or family or other things. And so it's really hard to prioritize this as something to talk about right now, right? Because I'm not sick right now at the moment. I don't think anything's going to happen to me in terms of a car accident or other medical emergency. You can go hiking and get into an accident, and you just don't know what impact it's going to have to you. So we don't prioritize having these conversations, and we really should, because now is when we have the time, if you are healthy, to really think about what kind of care would I want, but really it's about understanding what kind of care is available. What are the options that you have out there, and all of the things to consider should something happen to you. In the moment, your decisions might change. If you're able to make your own decisions in that moment, you might want something else, but it's really overwhelming to suddenly have to learn about everything in that moment. Whereas, if you've already done your research and talked about this, you already know what's available to you. And if you do change your mind about something, you can, in that moment, with a better understanding of, what that option is and how it's going to impact you, versus in the moment, it's very overwhelming. You're dealing with whatever being discussed with you in terms of your condition and the impact it's going to have. And if you're not able to make your own decisions in that moment, whoever has a sense of the kind of care you would like to receive. And they can also, that's why it's really important for them to know you well and to know the kind of care you want, because again, just because you told them that's what you want doesn't mean that that's what they have to choose. They can decide that this situation is unique and different, and so they're going to do X instead of Y. But they'll know what you want and how that would impact you and how you would feel about those decisions. And so that's why, more than the documents, it are the conversations that you have with those closest to you, multiple people, so everyone's kind of on the same page and they understand your decisions, and with your healthcare team, because again, they're the ones ultimately making those decisions for you, putting them into orders. And so you want them to also have a good understanding of, the type of care that you would want. So it's always better to have these conversations earlier, just for you to figure out all of the information, right? Everything that's out there that's available, what it means, and how it'll impact you.
Well, we have a long weekend coming up, so I think
Yeah.
there's plenty of time.
Good time,
before
you're
the
with
next
family,
workday.
yep, to talk about some of
And we'll
these.
be with family at the barbecue on Monday, guys. Just when you're flipping hamburgers, just talk about these issues.
And that's funny
do
because
have-
a lot of people I've talked to numerous people who they do that. They'll have Sunday gatherings, and sometimes they rotate who gets to, decide on the event. And so that's what they'll decide at their Sunday gathering with family, or at the holidays when we're all together. It's awkward and uncomfortable, unexpected, but it brings up the conversation. Like, all right, guys, let's talk about this. And it usually gets conversation going.
I do have
Raymond.
there is one question, sorry. Someone asked, what would be the second most important form or step after the 5 wishes form?
So the 5 wishes form is comprehensive, whereas you can choose your healthcare agent and list out not just your medical wishes, but I mentioned it talks about spiritual wishes, if that's what you choose to believe in. It also talks about personal needs and choices and conversations. So it's pretty comprehensive once you complete that form. It kind of entails all of those wishes that you have.
One more question. Is there any service included for financial planning in this?
So we do, through our COIL program, we do have, sometimes we do these in person throughout the state. And so we also do virtual. On our COIL website, there is some on financial planning specifically. And if you have specific questions, we have on our, we have a lot of volunteers who do our speaking with us, professionals in the community. We have a lot of connections with elder care attorneys and other attorneys. So if you have specific questions, I can try to connect you with someone who can best provide you those answers. But yes, we do on our website have current webinars that talk about financial planning. And then you can also look at our upcoming events, and that will have both in-person or virtual programs that might focus on the topic you're looking for.
And lastly, for those of you, checking all these First Friday webinars, our very next First Friday Wellness webinar will be on Friday, August 5th. Our guest at that time, we used to call it Amino Health, but they rebranded as Find a Provider, My Choice Find a Provider. And you can actually find that right now within your Benefit Solver account. But we're going to have, a representative from the entity come on and actually show us what's best practices for finding a high quality provider in your area that works with with our insurance plans. They have something called smart searches because they rank the providers, and the service, the tool. Once you find a provider that you wish to see, they'll also help you schedule an appointment, so you're not going back and forth with the doctor's office themselves, right? So again, that'll be on August 5th. With that, I just want to again thank Karina for hosting. Adelisa, thank you so much for joining us and giving us this information. And again, thank you, sisters and brothers, for joining us. I hope everyone has a great 4th of July weekend. Take care. Have enjoy the festivities, but have these difficult conversations as well. Thank you so much. Take care.